Hey friends, welcome to 1 Minute with Monet. Balance doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen one intentional minute at a time. This podcast gives you the tools to make it happen. I'm your host, Monet, your favorite concierge and founder of Time Managed LLC. Join me each week for practical tips and real examples to help you manage your lifestyle with ease. Hello and welcome. Today I have the opportunity to interview Dr. Jon Parker. He is a licensed mental health counselor. How are you today, John?
Feeling good, feeling good. I got a 2-month-old in the house, so sleep is hard to come by, but other than that, I'm good.
Well, let me tell you, it does get better. So my baby is 17. He is the number 3 of 3. So
Okay.
don't worry, you will get sleep. It's coming.
Okay. I take your word for that.
Yes. Well, today's topic is really near and dear to my heart. So my youngest is a boy, and I'm also married and have several uncles and cousins and friends who are men. So I always am interested in learning more about men's mental health, just so that I can provide support for them where they need. As I'm raising my son, I want to make sure I'm giving him the tools to cope as he goes into adulthood. So today I would love to talk about men's mental health, specifically in the African American community, and would love to learn more about you. So let's start there. Tell me more about your practice and how you got started.
Yeah, so it's a odd tale. So I have done all kind of things. I've audio engineering, banking, everything, taxes, all the things you can imagine. So finding a niche for counseling and therapy and psychology was just weird. It just kind of fell in my lap. So I'm from East St. Louis, Illinois originally, but I grew up in Los Angeles, California. Went to UC Berkeley for my undergraduate degree. So I was in Oakland, Bay Area. And it was kind of there where life kind of happened. Like I left for school at 17 years old, not quite an adult, but, just trying to figure things out. And I had never had a counselor, never heard of counseling, but I was working in a group home, and these kids every day, we're trying to keep them from hurting themselves, trying to make sure they're safe, take them to their appointments, and they want to fight me, spitting at me, all these different things. I'm like, man, I'm trying to help you every day. And then this lady would come in. She was an older white lady, and they would see her and be happy and run to her office and all these different things. And I was like, wait a minute. You see this lady like once every 2 weeks. I'm here every day holding it down like an uncle or a dad or something like that. And you hate me, but you love her. And so I asked her one day, say, man, what is it that you do? And she was like, oh, well, I'm a therapist. And so she took me to her office and she showed me all her tools, and she did play therapy and all these different things, sandbox therapy and all of that. And I was like, oh. And so she began to explain. I was like, oh. And so I don't know if Dr. Phil was out at the time, but that was really my only frame of reference for, like, I don't know, a counselor or whatever the case may be. But as I talked to her and understood what she did, I was like, oh, I have to bring this to my neighborhood. I have to bring this to my community. And then it was at that point that I aspired to get my master's degree and kind of move forward with therapy and counseling.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that story. And again, I'm a mom of a teenage boy. What are those things that parents should do to make sure that they're giving their teens, their male teens especially, the tools to cope with life stressors, make sure that they're doing the things that they need to do in order to grow up in a productive way?
Yeah, I find the starting point usually sometimes. So I won't say all mothers, but in my private practice, I have had a lot of mothers bring their teenage sons, Black mothers bring their teenage sons in and be like, I don't know what's wrong with them, fix them. And I'm like, okay, well, it's not that simple. We got to figure out what's going on. But I think oftentimes, depending on the relationship with the mom and the son, and of course the father and the son, teenage boys are usually at a place where they're trying to be autonomous. They're trying to move how they move, hang out with their friends, get the keys to the car, hang out, whatever the case may be. And oftentimes moms, more so than dads, generally are like, hey, no, stay in the nest, be around me, be at home, da 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 da. And so when you have that conflict of interest, there sometimes can be the problem of like, hey, son's trying to go, mom wants to keep him. And it's not a bad thing. Mom wants them to be safe, want to know where they're at, love their sons or whatever. And so oftentimes we start with, hey, what is the relationship like? Is he driving you crazy? Are you driving him crazy? He's trying to go. Are you telling him to come or stay or whatever? And then we go to like, okay, what does your daily routine look like? Are you getting enough rest? Are you handling your business in the classroom? Are you doing your sports things? What are you doing? And are you being successful at those things? It's one thing just to, I just go to school, read a little bit, get my work done, mess around, kind of active on the playing field. But like, you got to have an anchor of something that's important to you. And oftentimes I think with young men, when they don't have an anchor and they're doing something that means a lot to them, they kind of just blow in the breeze. And they kind of get by with just doing bare minimum and just enough to keep everybody satisfied. But I think a lot of times we don't pay enough attention to, is the kid anchored? Is the person doing something that they find significant, that they're finding meaning in, that give them life, so that that can kind of drive their attention. And then, you kind of deal with the individual stressors as they come. Is school a stressor? Is the workload a stressor? Is the athletic stuff a stressor? Is the social pressures a stressor? Social media, is that a stressor? I kind of, there's a one size fits all, but there's a lot of individual stuff that kind of goes on with each individual child, if that makes sense.
Right. So as a parent, if you're not sure if your child has an anchor or if they come into therapy, what are the tactics that you use to try to help that parent and the child find the anchor?
I think one of the biggest things is making sure that you understand what brings them joy, what brings
Mhm.
them peace, what brings them happiness. What are the things that they should be doing, or could be doing, or are doing? Of course, they're good things, right? You don't want them to be doing things that are shenanigans that bring them joy, but you want to make sure that as a parent, you understand, and the child themselves or teenager, are they're able to articulate other things that brings them joy, that brings them peace. And if they don't know, then that's when we start investigating and start digging. Because
Mhm.
again, it's we don't, in our culture in America, especially as Black folks, we don't have, generally, unless you're a part of like some community, we don't have a like manhood initiation ceremony. You think about the continent, you think about Africa, different places,
Rites
probably
of
in the Caribbean too.
passage.
You have a ceremony, right. Rites of passage, manhood, right? They go out, they bring back whatever to the community. The community eats, everybody feels good. They grab the little boy out the hut. Mom saying, "No, leave my boy alone." He goes out, does his thing. He comes back a man. And so with Black American culture, African American culture, we generally, again, unless you're in some kind of program and it's very geared towards rites of passage, we don't have that. And so we have a lot of just young men just wandering aimlessly trying to figure it out. And so unless you have parents that are in tune with, hey, this is what you need to be doing, this is what we think you need to be doing, what it is that you want to do, I kind of ask those questions to kind of figure out where are they headed, what it is that they like, where they want to go. And it depends on their age. 12 and 18 are two, those are different stages. And so just trying to figure out where they are and what I can do to kind of bring some kind of, I like to guide. Like, I don't like to tell, I like to guide. Like, my job isn't to tell, but my job is to guide. And so I
Mhm.
might do an assessment where I give them an actual piece of paper and say, hey, fill out this assessment so we can see some of your attributes, and then as well as your interests. There's an interest inventories that we can do. And so we can have that actual on paper, and then I can just ask questions and to bring the parents in, and we can kind of just talk together.
Okay, nice. A lot of what you said reminded me of two things. One, we all crave that stability and we also crave community. So it is likely that some of the repercussions of a child acting out or you not getting along with your parents can be because they crave that stability. And I also think one of the problems that we have in our community today is that we don't have that sense of community that you would get on a continent in those rituals that, our ancestors may have gone and that are still practiced today there. And so if you don't have that sense of community, if you don't have people around you who are interested in helping you find that stability, I can definitely see how that can be a challenge for our young men.
I understand.
If you could talk directly to teens, let's just say 13 to 20, what are 3 to 5 things that you would tell them to help them get started on their growth and give them a leg up in life?
It's no one likes to hear it, but I think the biggest thing is checking the online presence and the social media stuff. There's a whole bunch of studies out there that say that, I mean, technically, you shouldn't even have a device before you're like 13, 14, 15 for real,
Wow.
and it should be very, very, yeah, no, 100%. Like, there was a study this lady did. I think it was like, I can't remember the title of it, but basically she found out like before eighth grade, kids don't even need to be exposed to social media, like, period, right? Not internet or YouTube, but like social media. And the biggest issue is the comparison. The biggest issue is the depression that comes with it. The cyberbullying, all these different things are things that aren't productive to our psyche, right? To our spirit, to what we need to be doing as people, even for adults. And so having that exposure, and you'll hear oftentimes, it's called the frontal lobe, and you hear all the time like, hey, before the age 25, 26, your frontal lobe isn't even close, so you're prone to make bad decisions based on just being young and your brain not developed, right? And so imagine you have a 13, 14, 15-year-old, even a 20-year-old who's trying to figure out life, and all the images that they're getting are fake. Nowadays we got, deep fakes, we got AI, we got all this other stuff. So you listen to people that aren't really people. You're taking advice from machines. Like, it's just a bad way to start your life, right? And so my thing is always stepping back from that, probably cutting it out altogether if possible, and giving yourself a refresh, a good 30, 60 days of none of that, and kind of reading books, finding yourself, spending time with family, being outside. I'm a big nature buff. My whole dissertation from a PhD was about nature and the mental health implications. So like, cutting out the social media, getting outside a little bit more, reading and finding interest in things through like not the internet. Like, hey, I want to learn about, psychology. Let's go to the library. I want to learn about architecture and archaeology. Let's go to the library, like reading things. It's an old school tactic and thing that we don't think about a lot. But the things that kick off in your brain with reading and learning, I think, are much different than watching the 30-minute videos or the 15-minute videos or the 2-minute videos on YouTube or whatever. There's some value in that, but I
Mhm,
think
mhm.
again, reading is fundamental. I think assessing your peer group is very important. Oftentimes we hear you are who you hang out with, and so at the end of the day, if we're trying to establish a baseline of like, hey, 13 or 20, like anything into that range. Like, hey, I'm 20 years old, maybe college age, maybe I'm doing a trade, maybe I'm at home. But who are the people that are influencing me the most? Who are the
Mhm.
people that are in my ear the most? Who are the people that are leading me and guiding me? So again, social media, reading books, assessing your peer group, getting outside. And I think the other thing would kind of just being assessing the relationships you have with your caregivers or the people that are in your circle. It's one thing for peer groups and assessing the people that are around you, but it's another thing to be like, hey, you know what? I got a solid dad. I got a solid mom. I got grandparents, uncles, whoever that are in my circle. I need to check in with them. I need to get some wisdom from them. I need to get some insight.
Mhm.
They know me better than I know myself. They know me all my life. They can probably see things and assess things from a different perspective. And so, 20 years old, hot shot, you think I got it going on, but your uncle, grandma, grandpa, somebody in your family might be like, hey, boy, you need to sit down somewhere. Let's have this conversation. And so I think
Right.
that's one of the things, again, too. I'm always about community. I'm always about the elders. I'm always about that respect. So I think the last piece would be just checking in with the people that know you. I know this sounds kind of folky and hokey and not really, but it's getting back to the basics. You know what I'm saying? And starting at a
Yes.
place where things.
Yeah, I think we need that, especially since we're in this age of, some of us may not live near parents. So when I grew up, my grandparents were up the street, was at my grandmother's house all the time. I have 17 cousins on one side of my family, probably 19 on the other. So I was always around
Mhm.
family. Until this day, I value wisdom from my elders. So my grandmother is still alive. She's 92, I believe 92 or 93. And I get so excited when I'm around her because she's sharp as a whip and she still, till this day, is able to tell me stories. I ask her questions, we laugh. And so there's so much value in convening and talking and, sitting at the feet of your elders. And so I hope that our young people begin to see that value if they don't see that already, because it can definitely help. And we'll talk more about stressors later, but I do think that can be a tactic for relieving stress, for understanding like your path and helping with decision making and things of that nature. So I think going back to the basics is probably just what we need in the face of all the technology and the media influence that we have today. All right, so let's talk about Black men's mental health. So, adults and coping. When you think about the Black men who come into your practice, what are some of the health challenges that they typically bring to you? Mental health
Yeah, I
challenges, I
think
should say.
mental health challenges. So depending on the age group, but I think stress is one of the biggest underlying things that doesn't get talked about enough.
Mhm,
So stress, there's levels and varieties, right? So you have like the everyday mundane stress of like black man in America. I hear a police siren, my heart start beating fast, my hands get sweaty. I'm trying to figure out what's going on, even though I haven't done nothing. But I hear that siren and it just does something to me, right? And it does something
yeah.
to us, to our cortisol levels, and we just get worked up. Microaggressions, if you're not familiar with that term, it's like the idea that you go to work, somebody says something intentionally that is not an overt like an active aggression. It's a small, minor active aggression, and it makes you feel a
Mhm,
certain way. You're trying to figure out what's going on. It just throws your whole day off. There's the depending on the community you live in, it could be community violence. It could be things going on in community that kind of causes stress. It could be the idea of, again, if you're in the social media world, not meeting expectations. I'm not rich enough. I don't have the car that I need. I don't have the house that I need. I don't have the spouse I desire. I can't take the vacations that I want to take. There's a lot of that pressure that comes with that social media world. That's a lot of underlying stress that people don't understand. And I think comparison is one of the bigger things that I'm finding, like post COVID, when everybody was inside and had time to just sit on the computer and look at everybody's life and all of that. But the comparison that we have as men, that's just underlying the surface, that I don't know if it was such a thing before, because you didn't have the access to everybody's life all the time to see what
true.
people are doing. And then you don't have the understanding that it's not even real anyway. No, nobody's, I mean, some people are for the drama and they put, the shenanigans that happens in their life. But generally, people are trying to put their best foot forward when they're on the internet, right?
Yeah.
And so that it's a slippery slope that gets into our heart that we don't consider. And I think spiritual life is one of the things too. Like when you're not spiritually grounded, I don't want to take it in a direction maybe you don't want to go in, but when I feel like when you're not spiritually grounded, and you don't, you're relying on you to figure it all out, to fix your problems. You don't have a source of strength that's outside of yourself. It's another source of underlying stress that people don't recognize. And having the weight of the world on your shoulders, like you feeling that you have to do it all. You got to figure out the answers. You got to figure out the solutions. And when you can't, it sets you off and it does bad things to your mind. And so I think those are some of the things again that aren't necessarily age group, like just not just 20s and not just 30s. Like these are men that I see from again 20 to 60. They have all these different things that are going on, and I think stress is the underlying thing that leads to depression, anxiety, and
Yeah.
different disorders that make about.
And have you seen any shifts in within stress or within those typical issues that people come to you with over the past 5 to 10 years?
I think if the person isn't intentionally addressing the issues that make them stressed, or they
Mhm.
don't know the things that make them stressed, then it's difficult to make that shift. But I feel like, of course, I'm gonna say, yeah, somebody come see me, they're gonna be good when it's all done. But I think even when you see a therapist or a counselor, psychologist, psychiatrist, if you want to take meds, whatever, if
Yeah.
you're not doing the work. And so the thing that I push a lot, as I kind of alluded to, my dissertation for my PhD was looking at nature-based interventions, and those are things that require you to be outside, walking and talking with your therapist, or just
Mhm.
doing horticulture stuff where you're in the dirt digging with your hands, just being on a gazebo while you do therapy, just being outside. There's tons and tons of research that hasn't been done with our population that says that just being outside. Your boss says something
Yes.
crazy to you, you walk outside, you breathe a little bit, you stare at the trees, you feel the wind on your face, you feel better, right?
Yes.
And so I mentioned because those are the things that come along with the therapy, right? It's like doing the work, putting in the time, doing your breathing exercises, journaling, doing the stuff that may seem funny to black men. Like, man, I'm not about to write in a journal and have a candle going and take a bath. I'm not sitting down, like it's a lot of things that are soothing and relaxing that can offset the stress and help you decompress, but you got to be willing to do it. And
For
I think
sure.
generally when men, especially black men, when they come see me, they're at the point where they're like, either somebody told them to come or they just at their wits end and like, hey, somebody said therapy might be a good idea. And so there has been a shift. A lot of reality shows. I got a call once to be like an on-set therapist for one of these black reality shows in Atlanta. Just a lot of stuff is shifting the culture. I think a lot of black entertainers and athletes have started mental health things. Taraji P. Henson, I think she started a whole mental health thing. And there's a lot of black outdoors groups that are happening now. And again, I'm gonna keep talking about outdoors, but people are just recognizing the benefit that we know intrinsically as people from the outdoors. America kind of made the outdoors not safe for us and not, blood, sweat, and tears of slavery and all that other stuff. But outdoors is great and it has so many benefits. And we come from, not saying that we lived outdoors, but I'm saying we are people that recognize nature and farming and being outside and different things that intrinsically make us feel better. But besides that, not to belabor the point, I think once we realized that being inside wasn't good for us, and we're like, yo, we got to figure out something to feel better. I think therapy
Yeah.
became an option. Being outside became an option. Spending more time with your loved ones and friends became an option. And I think those are the type of basic things that the pursuit for riches, the pursuit for glory, the pursuit for, you know, the commercialism of things, the capitalism of things got the best of us. And I think that COVID slowed things down and allowed us to focus on what was more important. And our health and our mental health was the thing that a lot of people realized was the most important piece.
And a lot of the underlying things that prevented probably Black men especially to come to therapy had to do with stigma.
Mm.
Is that stigma changing? Is there still more work to do around stigma, to
I,
come into therapy? Because,
it,
we wanna pray everything away. We don't need to go to therapy. You just need Jesus. That's not
right, right.
necessarily true, which is, I mean, of course, we wanna have that spiritual foundation, but ultimately, we need to go to therapy.
Yeah.
And is that stigma
Right. Yeah.
changing?
So we got it on both ends in black. And so black culture, right? And so we have the sacred secular divide. So for a long time, churches were pushing against the idea of psychology and therapy and all that because it was seen as secular. Because
Mhm.
Sigmund Freud and all these people that were seen as the front runners and the forefathers of the what do you want to say? I want to say art, but the forefathers of the field were, not necessarily people of the faith, right? Right. But
Mhm.
when you think about therapy and you think about counseling, it's soul care. It's caring for one's soul. And so it's very spiritual. It's very something that needs to be done in a church setting as well as in the four walls of somebody's room or whatever the case may be. But for so long, it was such a taboo thing. The church didn't want to deal with, especially Black church. Like, man, people are actively having mental health issues, and it's good to pray. It's good to lay hands. It's good to take them to the pastor. But some things need, not a pill pusher, but some things need medication, right? Some things need to have the talk therapy. Some things need to be diagnosed and have someone sit down and do an assessment and see what's going on. It could be ADD, could be ADHD, could be bipolar, could be autism, it could be whatever, right? And so I think we've had to come to a place where we realize, like, hey, you know what? God will fix it if you let him. But there's some things God has given wisdom to men and women to help fix things as well, right? And I think on the other end, stigma of just in general, of like, I'm not crazy. And I think it depends on the size of the town and where you are. You're in a small town, you see somebody's car parked outside of Dr. Parker's office, oh, you know what they're doing, right? But in the bigger space like Atlanta or bigger cities, Chicago's, LA's, whatever, I think that therapists are doing a better job of making therapy, I won't say mainstream and I won't say cool, but making it normal. So you have a
Mhm.
lot of education that take place in school. You have education that take place in the churches. You have education taking place in communities. You have fairs and festivals and mental health things and K runs, and all with the purpose of exposing people to mental health. And so I think because I'm in academia now, right? And so if I'm not, if so, my study was, I had to, because of the error we have of the DEI folks and all the Doge and all the dust, I had to change the title of my dissertation.
Okay.
But the idea was, it was checking the willingness of Black people, Black adults, to participate in nature-based interventions. Like, that was my whole like dissertation PhD thing, right? And out of my study, of the 100 and some people that are in my study, everybody except for one person, like, yes, I'm willing to use nature as a way to feel better. And so if I wasn't there as a Black male, all the studies that have been in the past with, when it comes to nature basic things and nature exposure and all these different things, that when you look at the method section, there's very rarely Black people, right? So you have all these years of research saying being outside in nature helps, but they don't do it with us. And so the point that I'm making is that when it comes to stigma, now that we are in the rooms, now that we are getting the PhDs and the advanced degrees and the master's degrees in the psychology and social work and all these different things, we're able to push the culture forward and show and talk about the benefits that wasn't happening before, because it was for white people, it was for rich people, it was for crazy people, it was for all these different things besides us. And we the ones that need it for sure, 100%.
Yes,
Not because we're
absolutely.
crazy or have issues, but we've been in a country for a long time that have pushed things on us that have made our mental health not be the most optimal. You know what I mean? And so
Right.
I think that now that we have people like us that are pushing the culture forward, it's becoming a lot more mainstream. But there is work, stigma still exists, but I think we're
Mhm.
doing a better job now of making it less of a problem, and making it less of like, hey, you're crazy, that's why you're going to therapy.
Yeah, that makes me really happy because we all needed it at some form or fashion at some point in our lives, right? And when we reach that point where we say, "Yes, I should go to therapy," or we're encouraging the men in our lives to go to therapy, how can they like take that step to be vulnerable and to come in to see you or to make that phone call? What does that vulnerability look like?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is not seeing therapy or counseling as a last ditch effort. Now it can be sometimes, like, yo, my wife said I gotta go, so I'm going, right? But I think it's changing the perspective of what it means to have a therapist. I'm a therapist and I have a therapist, right?
Mhm.
So everybody can get it, right? There's everybody get that smoke, like, come and get this work, let's figure things out. But I think it's really the understanding of it's I won't like make it cool or whatever. And it's more so just the idea of like, hey, the point and the goal of therapy is to have somebody on your side that can see past your current perspective, that can see a little bit further than where you are, that can maybe address your past issues and give you insight to
Right.
why you are who you are and why you think the way you think and why you behave the way you behave. Is to get clarity and to get understanding of who you are as a person. And it's not necessarily because you're broken. It's not necessarily because something's wrong with you. It's not necessarily because you have issues, which all of those things may be the case, right?
Mhm, mhm.
But I tell people, the thing is, like, you don't have to come to therapy or counseling when you're broken and when it's your last ditch effort. It's maintenance sometimes.
Yes.
Sometimes it's to get ahead of the things, right? Sometimes it's to check in. And I think as Black men, we wait until we break down. It's like I have a book that's coming out, but one of the chapters will talk about gauges. Like, you don't wait until all your gauges on your car come on and say oil at this and all the things. Like, that's not when you go. You go and get your oil changed every certain 3,000 miles. You go and get your tires rotated. You go and get your brakes checked. You check in, you check your gauges. You don't wait till they all flashing before you start checking in. And so for
That's
me, it's like,
right.
hey man, right before them gauges get to going off, check in, check your oil, check your tires, make sure everything's working properly so that when the stressors come, when the pressures come, you're able to fight it and you have the tools. You have the tools. That's what I'm about, giving you the tools to do what you need to do. And I think that perspective, I think, and having that conversation with people about tools, about checking in, about checking your gauges, about making sure that you have somebody in your life that can come from a professional perspective to help you, do what you need to do. And it's not about you being crazy or being broken or being stupid or something's wrong with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And even right now, we're at the beginning of the year. And so we're thinking about ways that we should take care of ourselves better. So we think about that in the physical form, but we also need to make sure we're taking care of our mental health. So as we begin the year and we're in this planning mode, I don't know how men plan their year. I know as a woman, we have vision board parties and, and all the things. But from a male perspective, how should men start to plan their year with clarity, and in a sustainable way so that they are making that maintenance a priority and they have the tools so when the stressors come, they know how to handle them?
Yeah. What you said is all in my book, the sustainability.
Ok.
Oftentimes men have this thing. It's like, the resolutions, right? I'm gonna hit the
Mhm.
gym, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. And we make all of these lofty goals that there's no way we're gonna reach them. So the
Mm.
thing is like always, whatever you're thinking through, like we do need to have the vision board parties. We need to have a journal. I got 2 or 3 journals and I got 2 or 3 planners, right? Out my brain. And then I got my phone and it got 4 or 5 calendars on there, right? So I'm just buzz, things are going off. But the point is like I don't want to miss things, right? And so starting off the year, thinking about, hey, what are the goals? What are the things I'm trying to do? You got to start off. If you have the big picture of your goals, whatever the case may be, you still have to have the small everyday stuff. Hey, I want to go to bed at a certain time so I can get 8 hours of sleep. Hey, I want to wake up and I want to journal. I want to read or I want to study or read my Bible or pray or do something that builds your spirit man up. I want to get a good breakfast in. I want to eat healthy. Hey, it's you maybe, if a goal is like working out. The goal isn't I'm about to go in and hit the weights every day for 3 hours and just get super swole. It's like, no, I want to start off. I just want to stretch. I want to take 10 minutes to stretch in the morning. And if I don't do nothing else that day, I'm going to stretch at night before I go to bed. Right. And then, okay, the next day, I'm going to do 10 minutes of this. Then the next day, 10 minutes of that. And so you build yourself into like, okay, I started off with just stretching. Then I started off with 10 minutes of doing push-ups. Now I might go outside and run. Okay, now I might go outside and do some, something else. Now we're building into the more intensive cardio stuff. And now we're doing the heavy weights, but you start off small and build up to something. You don't start off at the top level. And I think as men, we're just built to way to like, I'm gonna just go in. Now you're sore and tired and you don't want to go to the gym anymore. Right. Because of that first day wore you out. You know what I mean? Right. And that's why I'm like sustainability. You say it's sustainable, small things. And then maybe you reward yourself. Maybe you did your 10-minute
Yeah.
stretch. Now you give yourself a piece of chocolate. You know what I'm like? All right. You don't give not a whole chocolate bar, but you just kind of, you want to build that routine, right? So you give yourself a reward after you've done the thing that maybe you didn't want to do to encourage yourself to keep going. So sustainable goals, small goals, build yourself up to the big things, but you don't want to
Mhm.
do anything that you're not going to continue doing. Like that's the worst thing to do when it comes to the New Year's resolutions, the setting the goals or whatever. It has to be practical and it has to be something that you actually can do. If you're like,
Absolutely.
hey man, I'm about to spend that. I got 4 kids. I didn't mention that. I got a 2-month-old, but I got a 10-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 4-year-old. And if
Okay.
I think for 1 minute that I'm gonna have an hour apiece to do something to myself before the 8 o'clock, it ain't happening, right? And so I have to be realistic about the things that I actually can do. And so if I'm setting goals that aren't realistic, if I'm setting goals that aren't sustainable, if I'm not having small incremental steps to achieving my goal, I'm setting myself up for failure. So, and accountability is another major factor. I have a friend that I meet supposed to be every Friday at 10 a.m., right? But that's our built-in accountability during the week to talk about, are we meeting our goals? Have we done the things that we said we're going to do? How are we treating our wives? How are we treating our kids? You know what I mean? Just trying to figure that out. And so having,
Okay.
whether it's a group of men or one guy or something, just building accountability into your week. It may not be daily, but maybe just once a week where you're having accountability and checking in and saying, hey, have I done the things that I said I was going to do? Are we moving in the direction of health and wholeness? And just making sure you have that check in. So
Mhm.
the goals, the small, sustainable stuff, the check ins. And I think, again, making sure that whatever your routine looks like, I hate routines and I hate schedules, but I have to live by them. I like to be free. I think going to Berkeley, I just want to be out here and just like, no, man, you can't. Like, especially with the things I got going on,
Right, right.
just making sure you have a solid routine. Give yourself some freedom somewhere, but you want to make sure you
Yeah.
have a solid routine, so that you have something that holds you accountable outside of your accountability partner that you can look at, okay, on my schedule, I'm supposed to be doing this. Am I doing that? Supposed to be
Mhm.
doing this, am I doing that? You just want to have that routine down. And once you do it, it becomes a part of your life and it becomes a part of who you are. And it's not such a chore. But again, you
Right,
don't want to set a routine that's so rigid that you won't actually do it. You want to make sure this is fun, this is exciting, it's something I want to do, build in time to do the things you don't want to do. And I think as men, we need tasks. So it's like, hey, set a weekly task. Like I raise chicken as well. And I'm like, man, these chickens drive me crazy, but it's something that I do that just kind of brings me joy. Like I can just stand out there and watch them do their thing for like an hour, but I got stuff to do. But building tasks around making sure they're happy. Like, all right, let me make sure they got the accessible food. Let me make sure I built a chicken coop that's nice for them. Like, let's do something. And
yeah.
so as a man, having a task that you do on a weekly basis to build, to use your hands, to use your mind, to use your strength, it does something for you and it's good for you.
Right. And balance is important. So that's something that I preach to my clients all the time. And even through this podcast, my goal is for people who are listening and my clients to live life with balance and harmony. So, yes, I'm going to make sure that they have those things that are on their calendar, whether it's a self care day or their medical appointments and things of that nature. So, those are already set. So then you do have the freedom and flexibility to kind of do what you want to do. And then if things come along that you need to pay attention to, you know what's already on your calendar, you know what you already have in place as your routine, and you know where you can fit in the other things that may come about, whether it's an emergency or something fun that you might want to do, or something that came up at the last minute. You can address that. But it's all about balance. So if you can find that balance through scheduling, having the routine, and then build in the flexibility during your free time. And then also throughout the year, I want to get into thinking about failure and disappointment. And it happens to all of us, men or women. But how do men operate differently when it comes to failure and disappointment? And how can we make sure that men don't internalize it when they do, when they are faced with these times when there might be something that may have been a disappointment or something didn't go the way that they would have hoped?
We'll say that is a very generational thing that we have. I think that for like our grandparents, like there wasn't time to fail. Like there may be some failures, but there's so much going on in life. I got to figure this thing out. Right. And so there wasn't a lot of time spent reflecting on, man, I really blew it. Oh, I messed up. Oh, I'm so dumb. Or whatever's like, man, you got 19 cousins. I don't know how many aunts and uncles were involved, but you know what I'm saying? Like it was stuff to be done. Right? So it's one of those things where it's like, all right, so you have like my son is 9 and him and like when he was in VPK, the VPK teacher was like, I don't know what's up with these boys. They whine and they cry more than the girls. And I don't understand. And she's been a teacher for 20, 30 years. She's like, I don't understand what's going on. Right. And so I think there's something in the water, but I think it's something about, I won't, you want your children, you want your son to be expressive and have emotions and all of that. But it's a
Hmm.
way in which we go about the failures and things. We're talking about failure, right? So like, I'm playing baseball, I strike out, no big deal. I miss a free throw playing basketball, no big deal. I fail a test or don't get the grade I want, no big deal. But boy, man, he's my son and his generation, and I think up until like maybe 20 somethings, it's just maybe even 25. It's something about failure where they just like it's like a computer can't compute, robot breakdown. You know what I'm saying? And it's like they just blow a gasket, right? And so I am currently trying to figure out what is happening
Hmm.
to the psyche of our young men to where they're so broken so easily and where they can't face like failure and they can't lose, they don't lose well, they don't take things in stride like it and make I don't know, maybe
Seriously,
it's
yeah.
yeah, maybe it's a good thing that they're in touch with their emotions, but the way they express it is not the good thing. It's like, yo, it's okay to be sad, it's okay to cry, it's okay to feel
Hmm.
that failure, but it does something to them that breaks them so easily that wasn't happening before. And so I'm trying to figure that out. But I feel like, I'm 45. And so I can lose with grace. I don't have to shoot up the gym
Little
because
grace.
somebody called me a name or I didn't win the game. Like I don't have to go and shoot up the
Yeah.
school and threaten people and like even fighting. Like back in my day, you fight with your hands and you lose and either you come back and you fight till you're tired of fighting, or you're like, hey, you got me, and everybody going about their business. But nowadays, you lose a fight or you get embarrassed or somebody say something to you, now you come back shooting up the place, And so I think
Yeah.
something's just happening in our psyches of our men that I think, the 30s and the 25s and below, they're just built a little different and wired a little
Mhm.
different. And I think they need more of the conversations with the elders, some of the OGs. They need to, maybe they don't see people fail enough well. There's an art to failing well. Like you can fail well, like you can fail with grace, you can fail with dignity, you can fail with pride. And maybe they're not seeing enough practical examples of failure that allows
Mhm.
them to be like, oh, okay, I saw my dad or my uncle or whoever fail, lose, whatever, and they took it in stride and they kept it moving and they went on to the next thing, or they came back more determined to push even harder, to be even better, so that that failure doesn't happen again. And we have a lot of failing and giving up. And so I might have went on a slight tangent. Like I got excited about the topic, but I think in my private practice and just in my circle, I feel like older men 40 on see failure as something to attack and be better at, and to figure out how to approach the subject differently. It's a challenge. I put it that way. It's more of a challenge
Mhm.
and it's something to overcome. These young guys, they see failure as the end of the world, and they're willing to throw their life away and make a bad decision to hurting somebody or, doing something when they fail, or they just take it to heart and it takes them a little longer to kind of recover from that thing. And so I don't know if it's, again, like we talked about it before, the intergenerational connection that's missing, to being able to be like, man, I struck out, and then having your grandfather, your dad be like, oh man, it's all right, man. You miss all the shots you don't take, like Kobe, like you miss all the
Right,
shots you
right.
don't take, right? You know what I'm saying, right? And so I think something about maybe the conversation, the intergenerational nature of things that used to happen, but there's just some disconnect. There's something missing that we need to figure out how to get these young men back on track and be able to fail well and have, yeah, just to be able to kind of manage disappointment. I hope I answered your question. I kind of, like I said, I kind of
You
got caught up
did.
in these young men.
Yeah, you did. And one of the things that I've noticed on TV, so when you watch basketball, if you watch basketball today, they're always
Mhm.
complaining to the refs. I've never
Yeah,
seen that growing up.
yeah,
So I do think that there is a shift that is now mainstream. So when you think about basketball in the 90s, it's very different than how you see the players react to basketball in the basketball game today. I saw it with my son when he was, coming up in basketball through AAU and rec ball. Always whining, like, what are you whining and crying about? Just play the
right.
game. And one of the things that came up as I was preparing for this episode was that how do we separate your performance from your identity? Just because you don't
Mhm.
perform well does not mean that you are, a bad person. You're not a good athlete. Someone made you mad. Even
Mhm.
some of the men that I've talked to and encountered, this whole thing about respect. Well, he didn't respect me, but my father, my grandfather, my uncles, I never saw that come about. So when someone has made you upset, or you're interacting with your siblings and family members or friends, never heard them get upset because they felt like they were disrespected. But now it's like, oh, well, he disrespected me and I have to react this way. It's something about the identity where that moment of failure, that moment that something did not go your way, they are taking it and internalizing it and making it a personal thing that they are taking to heart, and they shouldn't be.
That too is like learned behavior. It's like we got the young boys that are watching the guys in the basketball flopping, complaining, crying. You got soccer culture, where soccer culture is all about, just flopping around and making, trying to draw a yellow card and a red card from the referee and all that type of stuff or whatever. And I think part of it is it's unfortunately the people that are displaying the behaviors are influential to the
They
children and the young
are.
boys, right? And you have the situation, and the same thing in the communities. You have a bunch of young men that don't know how to regulate their emotions, that don't know how to calm down, that don't know how to chill, that don't know how to take a L, or they say it's not a loss, it's a lesson, right? They don't know how to do that, and so they have this emotional dysregulation that just takes over, and so it's like a domino effect. Nobody knows,
Mhm.
everybody's just going crazy, everybody's just acting a fool. But again, the people that could show better don't do better, and then
Mhm.
those are the ones that are most influential.
Right. What are your tips for more emotional regulation?
I think it's something that we have to, one, well, I can't say this. Well, I used to be able to say schools need to do a better job, but we can't rely on the schools to teach our kids. But I say that because our kids are in school for more hours in the day than they're at home, right? And so
Mhm.
we have to build in something either at home or programming, community stuff, to where we teach emotional regulation skills. And so I think that's what the lost art of, like you said before. Like, again, if you're looking at sports back in the day, like, even I was watching this old guy interview. I can't remember, it was an older player. I can't remember, but he's a football player. He was like, bro, you have everybody celebrating after every play. Like, we barely did high fives in the end zone in my generation. Like he said, like, we barely celebrated a touchdown, right? And so now we have these guys celebrating after every single play, right? And then it's like, I think part of it's like lack of affirmation growing up. a lack of confidence growing up, lack of having somebody telling you, "Hey man, you got it, you're good, like don't worry about it." So now these people they need affirmation every 5 minutes. It's also about social media and the likes and the hearts and all that other stuff, right? That we get instant gratification from putting a post up. But I think the idea is that we don't teach enough regulation skills growing up. And so with my son, I have to teach him, "Hey man, breathe a little bit, relax, bro. Hey, step away from the situation and let's think about what's going on. Hey, you don't have to react to every situation that happens, right?" And so I think with me, I mean, it's what I do for a living, but I think we have to do a better job of the thing I like to show people is like I tell them to watch the movie Inside Out, like the first one. Because the movie Inside Out has all these emotions and it has all this little girl trying to figure out how to display her emotions. Her emotions are inside her body and they're all going crazy at the same time. Sometimes you're happy, sometimes you're sad, sometimes you're angry, sometimes you have joy, and they're just wrestling inside your brain and your body for dominance.
Right.
And so if we don't is at a young age, even words, right? So something that I use in my private practice is called an emotions wheel. And so basically you have on the very bottom on the inside of the scale, you have like basic emotions like anger, happy, sad, yeah, like that. And so as you build out and go further out from the wheel, you have, okay, anger, but is it anger or is it disappointment? Is it anger or is it something else? And so when you give kids and even adults, like I have to do this with adults, especially married couples, like, are you mad, but are you really mad? Like, what is it that, you know what I'm saying? That's really your expectation wasn't mad. Like there's some other
Right.
word that's categorizing how you're feeling. And so we have to start giving kids, especially at the young age as possible, words. So I think before, like my kids used to watch a show called Daniel Tiger, and he would cross his arms and stomp his feet. I'm mad, I'm mad, I'm mad. And then I'm like, hey, okay, that's cool when you're two, but when you got a 5-year-old student, like, no, we got to give you words. So we got to figure
Yes.
out what the emotion really is.
Use your words.
And so, right, use your words. And when we don't have emotional regulation and we don't have a way to say what it is that we're really feeling, that's the problem. So I think the real thing is like giving kids as early as possible words to describe their feelings as they can, as they can
Mhm.
intellectually understand it. And then making sure we build on that as it goes. And then also having emotional regulation skills. You miss a shot, you don't pout. You get fouled, you don't cry to the referee. You don't get 100% on your spelling test. It's not the end of the world, right? And I think that we have to set those expectations for our children. And it's crazy. It shouldn't say crazy, but it's sad because even some adults, when they didn't get that regulation, when they didn't get those words, when they didn't have those people that were building them up in the younger, when they were younger, it manifests as anger issues when they're older. It manifests as angry outbursts. It manifests in all these different things to where people don't even recognize that they're doing it because they've been doing it for so long. But it's when
Mhm.
you don't have the words, when you can't express and you don't know what, it's not like male, female in tune with your feelings. It is that. Like it's not a gender thing. It's just like you just have to be in tune. For me, as an adult, when I had my first child, my first two children are 18 months apart, and I had to talk to my therapist because like, man, these kids are disrespecting me. They're just, they were not at 2, but like 3 and 4. They disrespected me.
Mhm.
That my therapist is like, hey man, shit. They don't know what disrespect is until you tell them or show them. And it's not disrespect. Like it's not, you're not in the streets anymore, man. It's not like a kid steps on your foot. They're not stepping on your foot to fight you. Like you got to relax. And so I had to unlearn a lot of behaviors that were built into me from growing up in LA and Oakland to where everything was disrespect. You got to fight. Can't be no punk, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, it's not what you need to do with your kids, sir. And so I had to learn as an adult, like
Yeah.
emotions, regulate my emotions. What am I really feeling? And what really else is going on in life? I think that's the biggest thing. I hate to talk so long, but one of the things I realize in life is that if we don't really know what the problem is, everything's a problem. It's kind of like the
Mhm.
analogy of they say to a hammer, everything's a nail. Well, that's a screw hammer. You can't do that. Like it's not going to work. And
Right.
so we don't know why we feel the way we feel. Again, like with microaggressions, if we don't know that we went to work and somebody said something crazy to us and that's offset our day when we get home and we yelling, we kicking the dog, we fussing at the family, we slamming doors. Hey man, we got to realize, hey, we can't take that a microaggression home. We need to deal with that immediately. Maybe not confront the coworker, but we got to do the woosah in that moment. Step outside, get ourselves together, whatever, and reset and refresh.
Yep.
And so when we don't know what's really going on, that's where therapists may come in, or that's where the pastor or big mama or your grand, having some conversation with somebody. But if we don't know the underlying feeling that we're feeling, we just gonna lash out. We're gonna have problems. We're gonna slam doors. We're gonna be arguing with our spouse. We're gonna do all these different things. And so it's
Mhm.
the emotional regulation, it's having the words to the feelings, and it's also knowing what's driving us, what's making us upset, what's got us in our feelings.
What place do you think joy takes in all of this? Again, having balance. So if we're able to regulate our emotions, when things are going wrong and we're addressing our stressors. When things that are going well in our lives, how does joy play a part in that and expressing that joy and celebrating those accomplishments?
Oh man, this is a sticky one. So this is where, it's sometimes faith and secular and sacred and all this stuff kind of intersects, right? So I'll come from one perspective. In a non-spiritual way, when you think about joy, joy and happiness are also oftentimes mixed up, right? Joy is like an eternal, long-lasting something that drives you, that's always there. Happiness are these small, fleeting moments that, oh, man, I got an A, I'm happy. Oh man, I got a bonus at work, I'm happy. Oh man, I made all the green lights, I got to work on time, I'm happy. Right. And so joy is something that has to be found. It can have some external components, but it has to be a level inside yourself where joy is something that you have.
Okay.
Right. And if everything around you is terrible and bad and you got a bad attitude and you know what's going on, you're not going to have joy. And so why I say it's kind of sticky, because when it comes to faith, you have external hope in something higher than yourself that provides joy, and you always have access to it. Say, if we want to look at it through a Christian lens, like God provides the joy. We may not always be joyful because we got things and things that are happening, and stuff. Life is life, but when we tap into the thing that, if prayer, fasting, sitting still, going outside, doing something, being around people that make you happy, that allows you to tap into that joy, it's something that, how do I explain it? It's something that's always there. Joy is always accessible, but we may not always be tapping into it. Does that make sense?
Yep, it does.
And so, not in a non-spiritual world, it's hard for people to always have joy when what they perceive joy is something that's fleeting, that's something that they can never have, something that they can never catch, because what they're really chasing is happiness. They're not chasing joy, they're chasing these fleeting moments that make them feel good in the moment. But joy is something deep, something internal, something that, like if I have a newborn, 2 months old, I look at his face, I'm excited to do whatever that do. I'm changing diapers, I'm making sure I just want you happy. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Because he brings me joy, right? But when he gets a little older and start doing things I don't like, do I still have that same joy? Does he bring me that same? Yes, he should. But because of my perception, because of my attitude, the way I'm viewing his behavior, he no longer brings me joy, right? And so it's like one of those things where, unfortunately, when you're working in a space where your hope lies in fleeting things and other people and little babies happy, it's not something that it's not a reliable source. I'm teetering the line. Hopefully I'm making sense and you follow me what I'm saying, because I don't know the audience and I don't want I don't want people to turn off because I'm being too spiritual. But I think that
No, you're fine. You're
if you
fine.
don't, okay, if you don't have something that you can rely on, like a compass, like a true north, that's going to
Mhm.
allow joy to happen, you're just going to be chasing happiness. And that's good. But just know that happiness is going to be, it's going to come and go, come and go, come and go, come and go, come and go. But I tell people that you got to find some external source that's not based on your accomplishments and the things you do to bring you joy. And again, if it's keeping a picture of the baby, so I remember when he's 5 and he's tearing stuff up, and I'm like, man, let me just look at this picture every day to start my day, to remember the times when you brought me joy, so you can still bring me joy. But just having something, that can be as a marking place to where, like, okay, this is where I can find my joy, and that's where I can have my
Right,
peace, and I
right,
can.
right. Yeah, that totally makes sense. But also with celebrating your success, I think if you are able to find balance in that, so you're not always accomplishing something and then moving on to the next thing, or rolling with the punches. So when things are not going well, you're just going through the motions to get through it, and then when things are going well and you do have a moment of success, you're also going through the motions. But if you pause and celebrate that particular success or that achievement or that milestone that you've reached. For me, that's another way to find balance in your life, so that you're not always just focused on the bad things, or you're not glossing over the success that you may have or your achievements.
Oh, that is an excellent point. That's a great point, because what happens is we live in a culture and we live in a society where it's this post and the next post, this post and the next post. How many likes, how many da 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 da. And so
Mhm.
even to the point where I have an old school DSLR camera, you got to take the lens off, take the lens on. When I go places, I try not to use my phone to take pictures. And I try
Mhm.
not to even take pictures if I can just soak in the moment and watch the sunset, not record the sunset, not take, like, let me sit and enjoy the sunset. And like you're
Yes.
saying, when we accomplish things and we do things, we don't sit in it long enough. We don't just be like, oh man, that feels great. Oh, man, let me think about all the things that it took to get here. Let me think about the steps. Let me think about the hard work. Let me think about the late
Right.
nights. Let me think about it's like, oh, on to the next thing, because that's what social media culture is. Like, you put your post up, you're going to put your post. Like, there's a saying, I was just in Senegal, And the lady was like, there's a saying that they have now, the camera eats first. You go to a restaurant, you got a good food, the camera got to eat first. You got to take a picture of your food first before you actually eat, right?
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things now where like when we accomplish something, because the culture that we live in is such like driven by capitalism, commercialism, success, and all these different things, we can't enjoy the wins. We can't enjoy like man, you write a book, you're like, on to the next book. Like, bro, like spend some time, like let people pat you on the back, let people read it and give you some accolades. Let you know what I'm saying?
Right,
Like,
right.
and so you make a good point. Like there isn't that balance because we're always because of the culture we have now, on to the next, on to the next, on to the next. And that's why like fads and different things there's such a high turnover. Like I remember like, I mean, just baggy pants when they first came out in the 90s was such a thing for so long. Now it's like, oh, it's baggy pants for this weekend and it's no longer a thing. Oh, it's, these influencers and all these people are setting the trends. They last 5 minutes on to the next. Like it's because we have a bunch of people who are just seeking input and seeking likes and seeking things that are leading the culture.
Yeah.
And it's an unsustainable pace. It's an unsustainable pace.
Right, right, absolutely. Well, this has truly been a joy to talk to you about these topics and all things men's mental health. Are there any last words that you have, whether it's, how someone who might be feeling overwhelmed but doesn't know where to start, or, your are you hopeful for the future of men's mental health? And do you have any last words?
Yeah, I'm very helpful for the future of men's mental health. And I say that because a lot more men are paying attention to the need for like, hey, I need some help, right? And so I think we're in a point in time in society and culture where we're like you talk about stigma and different things where we're saying like, hey, you know what? I may not have it all. Even if I got good parents, even I got a good dad, a good grandfather, people around me, men around me, like there's some
Mhm.
perspective or something that's missing. And so I feel like we're seeing a shift in the awareness that there's a need for maybe professional help along with the help that we get from the
Yeah,
homies. And I think part of the thing too is people are realizing like, hey, I may not always get the best advice from people that I hang out with every day. There may be a time where I might need to see things from a different angle or a different perspective, right?
for
So,
sure.
um, right, and like we were saying before, like seeing therapy and counseling and all these different things as a way to prepare for the future, to gird yourself up with more wisdom and more insight, and to be able to see things from a different perspective, versus it being you're crazy and you need help, right? Like those are two contrast, big stark differences, and I think we're seeing those things. Pop culture, as much as I bash it, there is some level to where it's making it cool to see a therapist. Everybody. So I see my therapist. I see my therapist. It's
Mhm.
it's it's becoming something that people do. But I think we're just in a place where we gain so much post patient. As black adults, black men. We've had so much pushed against us. We had civil rights, and then we lost everything with the crack epidemic and all these different things that have happened, and just intentional things. 13th Amendment. I don't know if you've ever seen that documentary, but there's a lot of things that are up against us. And I think men are at a point where they're tired of being broken. They're tired of the heartache and pain. They're tired of fighting. They're tired of shooting. They're tired of the killing. They're tired they're tired of everything's not all negative, but they're just tired. And
Mhm.
we're coming to understand like, hey, man, there's ways in which we can help ourselves and help each other to be better men, to be better husbands, to be better brothers, to be better cousins, to be better adults. And I think we're just in a good space. And so I think that when, again, you don't have to get to your rock bottom to realize that you need to kind of get some help. And I even hate to say the word, just get some assistance, get some game from somebody else to get good perspective. That's what I use perspective as the word.
Mhm.
And I think that men need perspective and we need a lot of different voices, not necessarily like hearing voices, but you need to be able to see things from different perspectives. And one of the problematic things that are happening now, we have these things called echo chambers and the manosphere and the red pills and the blue pills and the passport bros and all these different things where men are just looking for happiness and joy, but they don't have enough people around them to give them real game and to lead them and guide them. And so I think that nowadays, if you're a young man or old man or whatever, wherever you are in life, if you're feeling let down, if you're feeling depressed, if you're feeling anxious about things, if you're feeling stressed out about things, see somebody to get some perspective. And again, it
Mhm.
could be a pastor, it could be a therapist, a counselor. It could be, talking to an older man. And there's nothing wrong with talking to women too, but I think sometimes men need perspective from men, but it's
Yep.
finding healthy perspective, going to people that have wisdom, talking to people that have been where you're trying to go or are where you're
Mhm.
trying to go. And then sometimes, people be like, oh, well, a drunk can't tell me nothing, but a drunk can tell you not how to be drunk. A drunk can tell you like, hey, don't follow me. You know what I'm saying? Right. And so knowing that wisdom can come from different sources, but making sure that, you check and have balances. Like, hey, I heard this from this person. Let me check in with my therapist. I heard this from my therapist. Let me check in with my dad. I heard this from my dad. Let me check in with my uncle.
Yeah.
Like, just having these check-ins, having accountability, and making sure that when you do seek help and seek advice, it's sound and it's wise and it's from somebody you respect and somebody that's going to be able to give you good guidance.
Okay. Awesome. Amazing. Thank you so much for being here. How can we find you if someone wants to make an appointment or if we want to follow you on social media?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm bad with the social media, but my handle is C John Roar. I'm coming to realize that I just can't be the old man that's angry about things all the time. But social media, when I do get it popping, it's C John Roar, SEE John Roar, JONROAR. If you want to know about me and my private practice, it's a simple. I'm trying to give you the website. I got a whole bunch of different ones, but I think the best one is probably Atlanta Black Men's Therapy. You can send me an email too. So
Okay.
SEEJONROAR at gmail.com. See John Roar on the Instagram. That's the only one I kind of use. That's how you can find me. If you need to reach me by phone, 678-310-8505. I'm happy giving that number out. And I'm happy to have conversations. I'm happy to talk, send a text message, whatever, email. I'm for all of that.
Okay. Great. Thanks again for being here, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining me this week. Let's continue the conversation on social media at 1 Minute with Monet on all channels. Also, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. Until next time, be well and be balanced.